Okay. And briefly, I just wanted to talk about a program that I'm involved with called New Mexico Humanities Now. And this is a transfer support program specifically for CNM students transferring to UNM. And I work as a graduate assistant with this program. And this program offers mentorship to CNM students who are recently transferred or who are thinking about transferring and want to talk about some of the opportunities at UNM. And we hold different events, different speaker events, different workshops to share resources that are available for students. And we have graduate assistants who are in different departments in the humanities who also are there to help act as a mentor or a sounding board for students who are interested in transferring. And we also have a couple summer classes that we offer. And this year we will have 2 courses, and they're called the Summer Academy, but the courses will give you credit for your AA at CNM and for your BA at UNM. And they're upper division courses that are cross-listed in a bunch of different departments. So depending what you need, you can get the department listing. And so the first class we're going to have is called Community, Memory, and Vitality. And that's going to be a summer course going from June 6th to June 24th, a 3-credit course. And then June 27th to July 23rd, we'll have literature and culture. And if you're interested in teaming up with a mentor from UNM, if you're interested in discussing possible majors, if you're interested in learning more about the Summer Academy, I will put my email in the chat, and I'm also going to share the website for New Mexico Humanities Now transfer program with you all in the chat. And so thank you. Were you going to say something, Jessica?
You can totally read my face. I love it.
Yeah.
We've done so many of these. But is there still a financial, like, isn't there a little stipend you get for, maybe did you mention that? Maybe you did. And
I didn't mention it. Thank you. Yeah, so there's an $1,000 stipend if you participate in Summer Academy. So you'll get the credit at CNM and UNM, and then you receive a stipend for $1,000 upon completion of the course. So that is a really neat opportunity. And it sounds like participants from last year all really enjoyed taking the courses, and they got to work really closely with the graduate mentors as well to help develop writing skills and research skills and just learning more about UNM. So thank you so much. I will share that information in the chat. And thank you so much, Alejandra, for being here. We're so glad to have you. And now I'll pass it over to Jessica.
Okay, great. Thank you. Will you watch the waiting room for me? Okay. Hi, everybody. Again, thank you so much. So glad to have you here. And thank you, Alejandra. I am Jessica Craig. I am a faculty member at CNM, and I teach in Latin American Studies and in anthropology. And before I introduce our speaker, I just want to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about Latin American Studies at CNM. We've got some cool stuff going on. We have an associate's degree in Latin American Studies now, which is great. And we offer a range of courses. We have the intro course, the course Intro to Latin American Studies. And then we do a great Latin American Studies film class, which is really popular and just a fun class from what I've heard. And then we do a bunch of different topics classes, and they kind of change every year. But right now I'm designing one with Brandon Morgan, who teaches in history and Latin American Studies at CNM as well. And we're pretty excited about this one. So we're looking at Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Antigua, Guatemala as these sort of parallel cities that share this interesting, constructed history based on colonialism, but also based on tourism and sort of the drive, to maintain the image of these two cities. And so we just thought would be really fun and interesting and, useful to sort of compare these two places. And so that's what we're working on now. And that's the kind of thing, the kind of topics classes, they're all over the board, but they're usually pretty specialized. and I think super interesting. So, so that's just some of the courses we offer. And then I think one of the coolest things we do is a study abroad trip. It's not a semester like you might do at UNM. It's usually about a 10-day trip. Brandon, Morgan and I took students to Antigua, Guatemala a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic. And it was amazing. 10 students for 10 days, and we really filled the space, but it was great. And so we're very hopeful. We haven't been able to go, of course, in a few years, but we're really hopeful for 2023. And we'll be sort of starting to advertise and recruit in fall of this year. So if you're interested in that, after I introduce Alejandra, I'll put my email in the chat. If you're interested in study abroad or anything regarding Latin American studies, please feel free to reach out. Okay, and so without further ado, I'm going to introduce, I need my glasses now. I've turned some corner, I can't read. But I'll introduce our speaker for today. Born and raised in Paraguay, Alejandra Acuña Balbuena started her global education from a pretty young age. She left her country for the first time at 17 to finish high school in Norway. She then continued her undergraduate education in the United States, spending some time in between studying and living in Italy, which is awesome. She graduated with a dual degree in environmental sustainability and Italian in May of 2020 from the University of Oklahoma, and joined the master's program in Latin American Studies at UNM in the fall of 2020. Her main academic interests include feminist geographies, urban political ecologies, and environmental injustice in urban environments. Her research focuses on discourses around the labor of urban waste pickers in her hometown of Asuncion. So, excellent. Thank you so much again for being here. I'll hand it over to Alejandra. I will say, if you have questions, we hope you do. We want to kind of wait until the end. It's just a little smoother. But if you think of something, feel free to put it in the chat, and I'm happy to read it at the end. If you think of it as Alejandra's talking, or if you just want to ask questions at the end yourself, that's also fine. But we will wait until the end to ask the questions, and I'm happy to ask for you if you want me to. So, thank you, Alejandra. I'll hand it over.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Can everyone hear me? Right? I'm like very paranoid because I've been teaching on Zoom for a while, and it's, sometimes technology is not on my side. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so we can start this presentation. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Cool. See, that's another thing that I get from teaching. I just keep asking, like, can people hear me? Can people see my screen? It's fine. This is me teaching. Okay, so my talk today is about research in Latin America during the pandemic. The last couple of years have been very challenging for everyone, I believe, just because we have been living through this very particular moment in the world. So doing research in this context, it gets a little more challenging. So I'm gonna talk about some of the challenges that I experienced, and some of also about my research topic and what I'm doing or what I'm hoping to do. And yeah, so oops, where is my, there we go. So like Jessica was saying earlier, I was born and raised in Asuncion, Paraguay. That's where I grew up until I was about 17 years old, and I left for the first time. I finished high school in Norway. Then I moved to the US for undergrad. And I received a dual degree in environmental sustainability and Italian at the University of Oklahoma. Then joined the UNM master's program for Latin American Studies in the fall of 2020. So I started my graduate degree in the middle of the pandemic already. But I think, as many people were at the time, I was kind of hoping that it will go away soon. And clearly that did not happen. So like I said, I spent some time traveling between places. I lived in Norway for a couple of years, and I spent a total of like 9 months in Italy, just like living and studying in different periods of my life. And something that caught my attention in like these places and also in the US that we do not have back home, at least in my city, is the issue of recycling. So when I first moved to Norway, I saw this like very organized like system for recycling all kinds of materials. So like, for instance, you could get like, what we used to do at my high school, we just collect a lot of like recyclable materials. So like bottles, like glass bottles, plastic bottles, all kinds of like things that could be recycled, paper. And then like, once we had a certain amount, we will take it to this facility that is usually like in every store or in every like even gas stations that you could like turn in this materials, and then you get like, I don't know, like the equivalent of 25 cents total for like all the things. So it's like a small retribution for recycling, but all of it can go, like it's very organized. And then in Italy, it was also organized, but like less so than Norway. And the fact that they could separate waste. So they have different containers outside of the houses that, you know, organic waste, plastic waste, paper waste. It was all separated in different containers. They call it differentiated pickup, and then different like trash garbage trucks will come in different days to pick those things up. Here in the US, is a little more, you know, like generalized, where in both places I live, so in Oklahoma and New Mexico, you could separate the waste and it will go, all the recycling would go into like a single container. So what we used to do in my apartment in Oklahoma was just like get our recycling in the apartment and then take it to a container outside where you could separate between like plastic and cans. That was it. And then here in New Mexico, we just, I think we just put everything in one single like recycling bin that gets taken away every couple of weeks or so. So every other place that I lived in has a history of recycling, or at least a system in place to recycle. Paraguay does not. So if you want to recycle anything, you have to take it to some very specific containers that are, as of right now, mostly in the city of Asuncion, and they're managed by private companies. So the like the municipality, the municipal government does not provide this service, and that is kind of like a space where the government or like the state doesn't, it's not providing these services. So my research focuses on waste discourses and lived experiences of urban waste speakers in Paraguay. So because the state does not provide the service for recycling, what urban waste pickers do is they pick out the material that can be recycled from among the waste, because we do not separate waste, and then sell it to private companies for profit. So I'm focusing on this specific moment in time, that is the closure of the Cateura landfill in Asunción. The landfill operated from 1984 to this year. The closure has been officialized, I think around February or March. And the landfill used to receive around 500,000 tons of waste yearly. Just for comparison, according to the EPA, the US produces around 145 million tons of waste that end up in landfills. So, you know, essentially we produce a lot of waste that goes to landfills. So I'm focusing my research on the labor of urban waste pickers. Since they pick up the material from among the waste, they work in very unsanitary conditions. They have, because they're informal, they have no job security. So there's like a lot of factors that place them in a situation of marginality within the city and within the labor market within lived experiences. So what I want to do with my research is understand community and labor in this like marginalized urban spaces. There are non-spaces at the same time. So this a space like the landfill is not something that is considered part of the urban landscape of a city, just because most people do not see and do not think about where their trash goes to once you put it in the trash can. So I'm gonna do this by analyzing discourses produced by the media, also by city officials, and also like bringing in the waste pickers' lived experiences to understand these narratives that compose the urban waste imaginary in the Asuncion metropolitan area. So the city of Asuncion and surrounding cities that are very connected to the urban experience of Asuncion. And the closure of Cateura, of this one landfill, which has been the main disposal point of waste for the Asuncion metropolitan area for years. The fact that that is closed now, it represents a critical point in the waste management crisis in Asuncion. This landfill has had its share of issues, both because it has been managed by private companies in sort of agreement with the municipal governments, but there were accusations of corruption and mismanagement of funds and precarity for laborers. So all of those just aspects contribute to the crisis that the city and the metropolitan area have been facing regarding waste management. So I chose this research topic because as what I saw in different places that I lived in, that there were systems that contemplated recycling within the waste management process. So I was thinking, why does this not happen here? What is the difference, and in which ways does this happen? In which ways does recycling happen in my city? I'm also interested in the situated discourses of waste in my hometown. So what do people think about waste? How do people talk about waste? And what do people think about the people that live and work around waste? The dump closure provides it's a specific moment within the history of waste management in the Asunción metropolitan area. And I consider the work, the labor of urban waste pickers, these informal workers that go among the waste to pick up recyclable material, as a key topic to be considered within this moment, within the closure of the dump. I'm also concerned about the future of waste management practices. Now that the dump is closed, where does this put us in waste management practices? How can we use this moment as an opportunity to restructure or replace practices that have been in place for years on end? And by highlighting the situated discourses of waste, I want to illustrate the structural and social disadvantages that affect people that live and work around waste. So this dump closure right now is an important transition point to whatever is coming next in terms of waste management in the city, and how we can move forward in a way that is fair and just to the people that have been working with waste for a while. So one thing about waste pickers is that their labor and their presence has been rendered invisible by people that live in the city, so by residents, by the city, by the municipal governments. So they are situated in this non-space, so a space that is not a space, where what their existence and their labor is not accounted for, even though it is a fundamental piece of the city's urban metabolism. So urban metabolism is this idea where the city is a system that, like it has inputs and outputs. So inputs for the city are, for instance, like energy and food, commodities, all the things that come into a city. And the outputs are mostly waste. And in this case, it's like domestic urban waste. So urban waste speakers work is like a fundamental part of Asunción's urban metabolism because of their role in like separating the waste and making kind of the landfill more efficient in a way that it doesn't have to handle as much waste. Of course, that is hard work because not everything that can be recycled is necessarily in a good condition to be recycled. So because most of this is like within waste itself, like things like paper get dirty or like plastic bottles can, like be it's like useless for recycling. Glass bottles can be broken, and that also makes it like a dangerous labor. And yeah, there's just like a lot of factors that contribute to this social structural disadvantages that these people experience. So my original research plan, whenever I came up with this project and this idea, and I was like very excited to start this project at the beginning of my master's program. And Kelsey can probably remember from that first class that we took together how we talk about like our ideas for our final projects to the exit requirement for the master's program. So my original idea was to write a thesis on this topic, on the waste speakers labor and what is this like transition point for the city of Asunción, what it means. So for that, I wanted to conduct interviews with city officials, interviews with the waste speakers, interviews with other people that, like had this, like their own perceptions of waste. I wanted to include a component of like, what is the like public perception of waste and also of like the work of waste pickers. So all of that was like, I wanted to do this very big thing. My like another part or component of my research plan was engaging in participant observation. So kind of like living within the lived experiences of the waste pickers, following what they do, observing and trying to understand their work, and like doing part of while doing that, like doing some kind of oral histories. So them telling me about their own experiences and how they understand their work and what they see as kind of like the value of their labor. So that was another part. Of course, with that, I had to consider my own positionality as a researcher, because I'm a white woman, I'm a middle-class woman, I'm an educated woman that lived in the city for most of her life, that lived abroad for many years. So I had to consider like what my positionality with respect to this, my research cooperators was or is still to engage in this like process of co-creation of knowledge. So as for like me not to be just coming in, taking the knowledge out and then leaving, I want to create something that is collective, that is like engaging, and that in the end like a format that people that I work with can understand and can use for their own benefit. So yeah. And then another component of my original project was doing this archival analysis of media. So initially I was going to focus on, like every perception or every article that has been written about the work of waste pickers. from, a specific time, like maybe 2010 to now, or early 2000s to now, just like every single mention of waste pickers' work in the media and how it was like portrayed, like what did this like discourses perpetuated by the media tell us about how other people perceive the work of waste pickers. So all of that was kind of like the idea. I wanted to do this, just work on, prepare a proposal in the fall of 2020, work on my, finalizing, refining that proposal, maybe starting getting like the IRB approvals, like the putting in place the research protocols that I was going to use in the spring, and then conduct fieldwork in the summer. So if all went smoothly, I was going to spend the fall of 2021 writing and analyzing my data, and then have the thesis finished by around this time, spring 2022. That did not happen because, and you guessed it probably, COVID-19, the pandemic, it just made it really hard to conduct research in this specific context. So just like a couple of things, logistical challenges. Traveling was very hard during the pandemic, even though the borders were already open for Paraguay by the summer. It was still a very hard time in the pandemic within Paraguay. So in the US, people were starting to get vaccinated, but in Latin America, there was still like this issue of lack of vaccines, vaccine scarcity. People were not everyone had access to vaccines by May, June of 2021. I got my vaccine in July of 2021, thanks to like donations that happened to give Paraguay like a lot of vaccines. And eventually most of my family got vaccinated. And then like after, I would say like August, September is when like most of the population was able to get vaccinated. So fieldwork in the summer could not happen because I didn't want to expose myself, didn't want to expose other people to getting sick. So if I was going to be working with communities that already are vulnerable to, because of like public healthcare is not the best in Paraguay. So if someone gets sick and I get them sick, that is like just it. I couldn't live with that essentially, because of like the reality of the public healthcare system, and that is what most people have access to. And there were also the technological challenges. So one of the suggestions that I received at the time was to try to conduct my interviews through Zoom or through other like media platforms. And I have to say that I did consider it, but the reality is that not everyone has access to internet back home. Not everyone has access to devices that can hold like internet calls or like video calls or even just like regular phone calls. Like there was an issue of access in terms of technology that it wouldn't let me collect my data in the way that I wanted to. It wouldn't be fair to the people that I want to work with, and there were just like too many obstacles to engage in this kind of work. It doesn't apply necessarily to the context of this particular research project. So technology was out of the question. So my next solution was try to do fieldwork in the month of winter break, December to January 2021, 2022. But because this is such a short period of time, it's a month, it was already really difficult to try and fit in like everything that I wanted to do within that month. And I also I experienced travel delays. It's always difficult to travel in the winter, getting stuck with snowstorms or like flight delays. And there was also the issue of Omicron rising. So I left the US just as the, like, we started hearing about Omicron in December. And then when I got back home, like this Omicron cases were just like rising, and like people, like when it seemed that the pandemic was kind of over, a lot of people started getting sick again, and it was also like it was dangerous again to try and go engage with people in like conversation, face-to-face interactions. So I didn't want to risk again getting other people sick. And like I said, like a month is such a short period of time to try to fit in and account for all this like unexpected things that do happen. Ideally, I wanted to have at least 8 weeks as a buffer to make sure that, if something happens, I still have time to work through all the like challenges and like unexpected circumstances that do happen. So I did want to give myself this like 8-week timeline to complete the fieldwork, the data collection. So trying to condense that into 4 weeks was already hard. And then there were also just the financial challenges. I did get a grant to fund this experience, but there's been like a lot of issues with processing it, and essentially like not everyone is in a good financial position because of the pandemic. And with my the money that I get from my assistantship teaching at UNM, it's kind of hard to try to finance everything that I was trying to do. But those were not the only challenges that I faced. So during the pandemic, or possibly because of the pandemic, there were like a lot of personal challenges. So I graduated undergrad at the beginning of the pandemic. Again, I was hoping that it will go away soon, but it didn't. So everything just looked like it was gonna keep going on forever. And that just like made me feel so demotivated generally. I struggled with like, I was thinking like, what is the point of me trying to do all of this? I can't, like, I don't even know what I'm doing. So why am I trying to like, why did I even start grad school? So all of those like questions that I had, like, just they were coming mostly from like a place where I wasn't motivated to do anything, and much less like anything related to research. So I was struggling with motivation for school particularly, but also like the lack of social life at the beginning of the pandemic was also very hard. I just moved to a new city. I was struggling making friends because I wasn't seeing anyone really. And it was just kind of hard to keep that like motivation to like engage in anything that life brought to me. There was also burnout. I did like 4 years of undergrad, like straight up, finished that in a very, very challenging semester where there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like I remember in March of 2020, I was thinking, oh, maybe this will be like a 2-week thing, and then we're gonna come back and I'm gonna walk the stage in May, and like everything's gonna be over, and then I can start grad school. But already by my senior year of undergrad, I was feeling very burnt out. There was like just a lot of other things happening in my life that I wanted to like dedicate time to, and just like recovering from a very intense academic experience. So I considered taking some time off from school, but that couldn't happen because of how the pandemic happened. Like I had to move straight from like Oklahoma to New Mexico because I couldn't go back home for the summer. Borders were closed. So even before I started the program, I was already pretty burned out. And that just became like worse once it started. So yeah, it was just very challenging. And then like there's the ever-going struggle with imposter syndrome. I think this is something that a lot of grad students experience in their lives. That like idea that I don't know what I'm doing. I still struggle with that pretty much like all the time, that I really don't know what I'm doing or what I like, what will be my contribution to anything. So, you know, like those three things just made it really hard to do any kind of research in my first year of the program. So when it's, you know, got to a point in the fall of, or last fall, that I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do to graduate. I don't have time. It will be impossible for me to graduate in May, which was the original plan. So I had to talk with my committees, my committee chair, a lot of peer work, and eventually I managed to kind of overcome some of these obstacles. So, you know, things eventually did get better. I talked to the chair of my committee, and she did suggest that I allow myself more time. So graduating this next fall instead of like the spring, there's nothing wrong with that. I had this idea that, you know, like I was failing graduate school and like not being able to finish in 2 years. So my chair was a fantastic mentor, suggested that I allow myself like the time to complete the kind of project that I will be proud of. Something else that really helped me kind of like move past this like challenges was seeking academic support. So talking with my mentors, such as like people in my committee who have been very supportive, talking with peers, so other graduate students that are struggling with similar things, that just like made me see that like I was not alone. I'm like in the world of like academia, I could find still this like spaces where you know, other people were struggling with similar things. And then also like relying on support networks. Again, another thing that made me realize that I'm not alone. In the spring of 2021, I was facing like a pretty hard time in my life. I ended up going home a little early because everything was online anyways. And I was like, what is the point of being in New Mexico when everything is online? And that, you know, like eventually I decided to start going to therapy. You know, talking to a therapist is like made things a little better, but also relying on my family and friends. Just like that kind of support really means a lot when you're struggling, especially with things that maybe they don't understand fully, but they can just like support you in other ways. And last fall, or you know, last fall throughout this like today, I've been trying to like purposefully make time to write. That is something that I'm still trying to do, because as you know, students, we have a lot going on all the time, weekly assignments, readings, things to like stay on top of. So like kind of finding the time, making time to write every day or even every week is a challenge, but I've been trying to do that. And you know, like I can now say that I'm like very close to you know, like starting this like project in a way that everything's going to be bureaucratically in order, so that I can start fieldwork in the summer and then just like write a professional paper by the fall. So yeah, even though it has been hard, like now I can say that I'm like excited again. There was a period of my life that I was like, nah, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to do this anymore. It's so hard. But now I can say that, you know, I'm excited again for research. I'm excited to learn new things. I'm excited to keep creating knowledge And yeah, it's not been an easy process, but you know, it's doable. And that's, I think, what I wanted to say, you know, for this talk, that it's there is something, like there can be good outcomes, even after like everything has been really hard. So yeah, I think that is what I wanted to say, and I timed it very well. So we have about 15 minutes for questions, if anyone has any questions, or yeah, cool.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. I'm not going to dominate, but it's so relatable. Like everything you're like we're all like nodding. Imposter syndrome. Yes, yes. So I don't know if folks have questions. If you want to just you know, ask your question, if you want to type it in the chat, it's totally up to you. But feel free to jump in with questions if you have them for Alejandra. Marisa says, thank you, Alejandra.
Hi, Alejandra. I have a question, kind of observation. First and foremost, I loved your presentation. I think it was a really informative talk about an issue that I don't think is discussed enough. And what, especially like how you've lived in different spaces, different countries with different languages and different cultures, it kind of made me think about what may be the role of colonialism or coloniality when it comes to recycling or waste. I don't know if that's maybe something that is part of the project, but that's kind of what it made me think, like if that has a role in the processes of waste or recycling in each of these countries, but specifically Paraguay.
Hi, Jeanette. Hi, Joss.
Hi.
Yeah, so I haven't like thought about that specifically, but I do think that, you know, can I say this, coloniality does play a role, not specifically within like the idea of waste maybe, but in like the like how our countries end up like consuming things. So waste usually comes from like overconsumption. There, you know, like even with minimal consumption, there is waste. But in the like the way the capitalist society is consuming now, that just leads to this like incredible amounts of waste that like there's no space to kind of dispose of the amount of waste that we create. So I do think coloniality had a role in like what's it called, just forming, or there is a word for this that I can't think of, but just shaping the ways that we consume now, because of like erasure of like indigenous knowledges, of like ways of consumption, and like kind of imposing colonial capitalist ways of consuming that, you know, lead to this like really disproportionate production of waste. Yeah, so does that answer your question, kind of? Yay.
Alejandra, are you gonna still continue with the same research methods now, doing interviews and participant observation and the media analysis?
Yeah, so I did kind of take out the idea of talking to like the public, the general public, just because eventually I realized that it was gonna be too much of like something to take on, especially in this like limited period of time that we do have. I do want to do interviews, but it's with far less people than I imagined, or that I originally thought of, just because you know, transcribing, translating interviews can take some time. So I'm like minimizing the scope. And like, yeah, with participant observation, also, I wanted to, just do it for like a limited amount of time, not, spending, a whole like day, but like going at different hours to the site to see, like focus on specific things that I want to get out of the observation. And also with the media analysis, I'm trying to focus on like the moment of closure. So that is something that there have been talks about closing the site for years, but now that it's actually happening, I want to kind of like understand like the discourse that is how do you say, like perpetuated in a way by the media. What the media is saying kind of shapes what the public thinks and believes and everything. So by just analyzing the media, I think I can get kind of like that idea of the public perception that I wanted to get to at the beginning. So yeah, I'm still doing like the same methods, but with a much narrower scope than I originally intended. Yes. Hey, Joss, you have a question?
Hi, so since I know a little bit about you, I'm curious, like I know you speak Guarani, so I know like when it comes to like this like space, there's a lot of like issues when it comes to like who's working there and like understanding identity with like race and class. So like how does you speaking Guarani, like how does that like help you, or like how does that place you as like a researcher in having access to spaces with these people who are working there? If you could just tell us a little bit more.
Yes. So yeah, Jocelyn just said that, like we are like that I had these conversations with her that like I grew up kind of raised in two languages, speaking Spanish and Guarani. I'm not a fluent Guarani speaker, sadly, because I grew up in the city and like in the language imaginary of Paraguay. Spanish is the language that's used in the city. Guarani is the language that's used like in El Campo, or like in kind of like outside of the city. Guarani is also a language that is considered like less of a language than Spanish. So Spanish has more prestige, just because like all of the bureaucratic anything, like if you want to do any kind of like documentation or anything, it's always going to be done in Spanish, even though Guarani is also an official language of the country. So just having some knowledge of Guarani, like I can understand. My grandmother still speaks to me solely in Guarani. Just like having that kind of like privilege that I can access both worlds in a way, like the world of the elite, the people that work in the municipal government, that is mostly in Spanish, and I can have these conversations in Spanish. But also the world of the people that work around the ways, who are mostly Guarani speakers. I can like still engage in like interactions, even though I don't speak the language fluently. I'm able to understand. I still don't know how that's going to play out in, once I actually start doing interviews or anything. I don't know if people will be more like reluctant to open up to me because I can't express myself in Guarani, or if, just because of the prestige that Spanish has in this like language imaginary of Paraguay, if I will even be allowed in these spaces. So yeah, I don't know. That's gonna be an interesting thing to find out whenever I start doing field work. Yeah. Yes, Megan.
So I really like this, but my background's in economics, so I'm curious about like if you're going to be able to do some kind of like comparative analysis a little bit, because I know that this is a thing that happens kind of across the global south, like trash pickers is really big in like Southeast Asia, and it's like kind of part of development models, like as economies grow and people gain more wealth, there are fewer like trash pickers, and this like goes out of, just falls out of the labor pool kind of thing. But it's also, I mean, we have really organized systems for doing this in the United States, but we also still have like certain states will give you like 5 or 10 cents back for cans. So at like public venues, homeless people will go around and collect all the cans that nobody else wants to be bothered with, so they can go and get those 5 and 10 cents. So is that kind of like economic mobility and kind of comparisons between countries and how that works? Is that going to be part of your research as well, or is that like way off because I'm from a different topic area?
No, I think that I think it's more part of like my theoretical framework, because there has been so much work done studying kind of the political economy of waste picking across different spaces. So like there's tons of work on that, on like waste picking in Colombia or in Argentina or Uruguay, and then other places that I read a few papers of like waste picking in Senegal, South Africa, places in Southeast Asia. So there's like a lot of that work already exists. So that's gonna definitely be part of like the framework that I build upon, and that I still have like a lot of work to do in that aspect of like the kind of theoretical ideas that I'm building upon. But my kind of like the gap that I'm trying to fill is more about like the discursive perceptions, or like the like the narratives that happen in and around waste. So not so much as the economic side of it, and a little bit about the labor, but like I'm not sure how I'm gonna separate that from like the because I am like trying to see issues of precarity and like labor security, but I don't I still don't know how, because I don't have a background in economics. I don't know how I'm gonna kind of separate those issues and like not talk about something that I don't know. But yeah, thank you.
Alejandra, I had a quick question that's more of just a curiosity. My frame of reference is in Guatemala. I lived there for a year and was there with some other grad students, and so, let me just get the dog. And, some of them had done some research there, and there in Guatemala City, there was a whole community that lived right on the landfill, like families, and there was even a school, might be a stretch, but yeah, it was a impromptu building where some folks would volunteer just to provide an education to these kids that couldn't get off the landfill. And I just wondered, is that in Asuncion, is there a situation like that where you have communities living on site, or is it really folks arriving each day and going home?
So I'm not entirely sure if like specifically like if people live in the site, like in the landfill, but I know there's a few neighborhoods around the landfill, and that's where most people that work there come from. It's it's not far. It's like because the landfill is kind of next to the river. Like the river kind of just borders one side of it, and then it's kind of like a triangle. There's like a neighborhood here and another neighborhood here, and like most of the people that work there, the families that live in those neighborhoods, their income comes mostly from waste picking. So yeah, there's like whole communities that are there, right, present in these spaces. There's definitely schools, and there's even been like an organization that kind of gave like music lessons to kids that live there. They built their own instruments from the trash. There's like this really big movement that happened. There's I think it's still ongoing, but I'm not entirely sure. And I think that I wanted to make that also part of my research, but I didn't end up doing that just because it would be too much and it's tangential. But yeah, like there's definitely communities that exist and occupy those spaces in the area. Yes.
Thank you. So we are at 2 o'clock. But does anyone have other questions? And there's lots of thank yous, by the way. If you can't see the chat, Alejandra, there's a lot of like thank yous. The dog has to go out. But does anyone else have questions or a quick question before we wrap up? It's very chatty. Very interesting. Thank you. Very interesting. Lots of accolades. All right, I think if there's no more questions, we'll wrap it up. Alejandra, thank you so much. That was fascinating. And as I said, highly relatable. Good luck, like the best of luck.
Thank you.
It's a really exciting project. And thank you everybody for being here. It was great questions, great conversation, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah,
And we
thank
are
you for
doing
the space.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. And we are doing a talk. I guess we should mention next week, Kelsey. I actually don't have the info on that handy, but
Yeah.
but we're doing another talk, same time. So keep your ear to the ground for that one as well.
Yeah, our speaker for next week on the 14th, the same time, 1 p.m. is going to be Jocelyn Castillo. And she's actually here giving us the thumbs up. And her presentation is called Central American Women in the Workforce. And we can't wait to hear from Jocelyn next week. So thank you all for coming. And Alejandra, thanks so much for sharing about your personal journey and your research. We really loved hearing from you.
Thanks, Ale. Bye.
Thanks again. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.